the scenes are set up by default to have the camera rig, which works by targeting, it aims towards this target cube. So you can see in the top corner here, the perspective changing. So you can see this is looking where the cube is. And the camera rig works by having these start and end anchors. So you can change your start and end anchor. And when you go down to the camera tools, so I'm actually going to collapse some of these so we can see the camera menu more clearly. There's a spot here called track position, which tells the camera where it is along the track. So you can go, just draw those in there. So now I'm going to go back into object mode here, so you can see I'm going to actually key my camera because I want to show you something else. So if I go back to my cameras here, so the track position on frame 1, I have it 0, so it goes from 0 to 1. So I'm going to hit the I key, which is Blender's spot for inputting keyframes. And to view these, we can go to dope sheet mode. So you can see here, we're seeing anything that's like object-based keyframes. And then when we click on the dope sheet here to go to grease pencil, it will show us our keyframes that are our drawings or our panels. So through the dope sheet, I can view where the camera is. So if I track position over here and hit I, now the camera will be animating when we play. And you may notice the character is not moving with the camera, but here's the thing we can do. So this is where knowing a little bit of Blender can be actually helpful. So we can go to modifiers. No, it's a constraint, yeah. A constraint called child of. Yeah, so this, I'm gonna go, and there's an object the camera's inside of called the chuck, and I'm gonna parent this to the chuck. So now what it's doing is, this object's gonna be treated like it's a parent, like it's a child of the camera. So now when we move the camera, the grease pencil object will always be aligned as if it's fixed. And you can also toggle this on and off, which is the advantage of using the child of modifier as opposed to actually parenting it. And then, oh yeah, I mentioned before you can do flipping, so I believe that was Control F to do your flipping. So that will flip your camera. And when you're doing this, you want to make sure the chuck is selected as the child and not the camera. Because if you do the camera and you try to flip, it will flip the world but not your image. But the camera's inside of the chuck, and that itself doesn't mirror. So if you have the chuck selected, mirroring will work perfectly fine. Now go back to camera controls. You can see here, you can also toggle on and off the 3D grid. And there's also a physical button for doing the mirroring as well. With the add-ons hotkey system, so hitting hotkey 1 on your keyboard brings you to object mode, 2 brings you into edit, 3 is into sculpt, and 4 is into draw or vertex paint. It changes depending which object you have, but there's similarities between them all. So similarly, if you select this line and hit 2, it will bring you into edit mode. So now you can control the anchor. So this one's got a bit of an S curve, but if I can click the other part, I can turn this into a C curve. So now, when you're using the track position, it's going away and getting closer. Yeah. Subdivide. Yeah, so you want to select at least 1 or 2 points and hit subdivide, and then you can get your points. So now, if I go track position, you get that little W going on there. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention too is the target lock. So you may have seen this here. So the target cube has 2 modes. If target is locked, it will move along with the camera. So whatever angle the camera is at. Actually, I'll turn on the 3D grid so this is a bit more obvious. So move this. The target cube moves with the camera, so it's in a fixed position. And if target lock is off, the cube is independent of the camera, and the camera is always looking at the cube. So even with target lock on, you can also still change the position of the cube to get a different angle. Yeah. And then when it's off, it goes back to the default of it being treated as a separate object. You can also copy your camera setup. So then when you create a new scene, you can go in let me just go back into this orbit view. So you can go in, and then if you paste the camera setup, it will make it have the same properties as the last one. It doesn't carry over the camera movement, though, but it will carry over the path and the positions. If you want to have a scene carrying over the camera movement, keyframe, track position. So let's start this at 0. So I'll keyframe that, and then say go to 23, make its position 1. So this will move along. And if I was working in a scene and I decided, you know what, I want to split this up into separate scenes, if you go into your editorial view, you find the frame you want with your object selected and press the K key, it will then split it into 2 separate scenes. So now this carries over the movement from the one scene to the other, but it's now its own independent scene. So we could also, go in and change information, like say this goes over here, but maybe we want to key this and just have it go back to start, right? So maybe this goes here instead. So now start's going back. So if we go to our first scene, it goes in and goes back. Okay. So also with the camera tools, you may have noticed there's a spot called Shaky Cam. So this is a built-in feature that will cause the camera to shake. So you can change the intensity level. And this isn't actually tied to the keyframing. You can keyframe the intensity as well. So I could go like very low, make it subtle. And you can also change like say the XY influence. So if you only want it to go up and down, you can do that. If you only want it to go right and left, you can do that. So you can really change the intensity. So if you're doing a scene and you want to give it kind of like a handheld feel, you can change the shaky cam level. And then when you render out your scene, you get a bit of that like bounce going on to make it feel more naturalistic. It was 0.8. Featured that quite heavily in these scenes. So you can see there's a bit of shake going on. So since they were in a plane, I wanted to give it more of a handheld feel, so I added shaky cam to most of these shots.